Once upon a time, in a town wrapped in mist and pine, there lived a girl who wore a red cloak. Her name was Rosalind Calder, but everyone called her Red. She was clever, sharp-tongued, and 17 was the kind of girl who asked too many questions and refused answers that ended in, "Because I said so." Red lived with her mother in a creaking house near the edge of Black Pine Forest, where the fog never lifted and the trees leaned just a little too far inward. Her father had vanished years ago. Her grandmother lived beyond the woods, in a cabin where flowers still bloomed in winter and the air smelled like cinnamon and ash. Red visited her often until one day she didn't come back. They found her cloak first. It was torn at the hem, soaked through, and caught on a rusted bramble fence just before the path curved into Black Pine Forest. The basket she always carried was gone. So was she. At first, they searched. The mayor called for a sweep of the woods. Men with flashlights and boots combed through ferns and fog. Dogs were brought in. Nothing. By the third day, the trail had grown cold, and that's when Detective Elswin March returned. He hadn't taken a case in 5 years. His coat still smelled of pipe smoke and mothballs, and he walked with a limp he never spoke of. But when he heard Red Calder was missing, when he heard which woods she vanished into, he came back without being asked. Because this wasn't the first time a girl had disappeared in Black Pine, and last time they hadn't found the cloak. Detective March visited the Calder home first. It was a lean old house with a crooked roof and curtains that never opened. Red's mother, Miriam, answered the door with a dish towel in one hand and a hymn still humming on her lips. "I told her not to go," she said, without being asked. Elswin tilted his head. "But she went anyway. She said grandmother needed bread and herbs, but there was no letter, no message." "You reported her missing. After how long?" Miriam's fingers tightened around the towel. "2 nights. I thought maybe she'd stayed over. But she didn't, did she?" "No." "Did you check the cabin?" "I don't go near the woods." Elswin studied her face. Her voice was steady, but her eyes darted, not with fear, with memory. "Have you lost someone there before?" he asked. She said nothing, but her silence was an answer. Detective Elswin March didn't believe in monsters, but he believed in fear, and fear had a name in the town of Gray Bend: Elias Blackmore. They called him the Wolf Man. He lived deep in the Black Pine Woods, beyond the old quarry, in a stone cabin with no chimney and too many locks on the inside. Children whispered that he talked to the trees. Adults warned each other not to look too long if he passed them in town. He rarely did. Elswin found him skinning rabbits on a flat rock outside his cabin. His coat was patched, his hands were scarred, and his eyes, pale gray, were much too calm. "I was wondering when someone would come," Elias said without looking up. "You heard about the Calder girl." "I heard the cloak was found. Then you know why I'm here." Elias finally looked up. "You think I took her?" Elswin didn't answer. Instead, he said, 20 years ago, a girl named Liza Moore disappeared. Same woods, same path. You lived here then too." "I still do," Elias said, "and she never came this far." Elswin narrowed his eyes. "And Rosalind?" Elias smiled, not kindly. "She did." Elswin stayed longer than he should have. He walked the perimeter of Elias Blackmore's cabin, notebook in hand, boots crunching over pine needles and brittle roots. No signs of a struggle, no blood, but there were carvings on the trees, strange ones, spirals, half-moons, initials that had been crossed out. Elias watched him from the doorway. "You're looking for evidence," he said. "I'm looking for truth. Truth doesn't always fit in a notebook." That night, Elswin returned home and opened a box he hadn't touched in 20 years. Inside were faded photos, police sketches, a child's mitten wrapped in plastic. The Liza Moore case. He had never solved it. Now the Calder girl was missing, and the woods had taken her too. But something didn't fit. The cloak hadn't been buried. It hadn't been hidden. It had been left out, folded wrong, torn on purpose, like someone wanted it to be found. Elswin circled one name in his notebook: Miriam Calder. Red's grandmother's cottage sat deep in the woods, far enough that fog lingered even at noon. It was built from old stone, laced with ivy, and crooked in a way that made it feel like it was leaning in to listen. No one answered Elswin's knock. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air was thick with herbs, dust, and something sharper, like rust. The fireplace was cold. The teacups were set for two, but no one was home. He stepped into the bedroom. The bed was made, the windows closed. Then he saw it, pressed flat beneath the rug, a corner of paper. He pulled it free. It was a letter, torn, unfinished, Red's handwriting. "I don't believe what she told me, not anymore. I think she's hiding something. I think she..." It ended there. Behind him, the floor creaked. He turned. No one, but in the window's reflection, he saw it. A figure, standing behind the trees, red cloak, still watching. When he turned again, it was gone. Elswin didn't sleep that night. He stayed up rereading every statement, every note, Miriam's delayed report, Elias's strange carvings, the unfinished letter. And now, the figure in the woods. Red wasn't just missing. She'd been trying to say something. By morning, he had a plan. He returned to Miriam Calder's home. This time, she didn't invite him in. She stood in the doorway with her arms crossed and a look that said no before he even asked. But Elswin had never been polite when answers were hiding. "I found a letter," he said. Her eyes flickered. Rosalind was afraid of someone close. "She said you were hiding something." Miriam's hands trembled now, just slightly. "Was it the same thing you hid 20 years ago?" Elswin asked. At that, she broke. She was going to tell. Miriam whispered. She said she would walk into the woods and shout it if she had to. What was she going to tell? Miriam looked past him toward the forest. Her voice dropped to a breath. That Liza Moore was her sister. Elswin felt the world tilt. Liza Moore, the cold case that haunted him. She hadn't just vanished. She'd been erased. "You told everyone she was a cousin," he said slowly. Miriam nodded, eyes wet but hard. "Different fathers, same blood. I was just a girl when she disappeared. I begged them not to blame Elias, but the town needed a monster, so they gave them one. And Rosalind, she found my old journals. She started asking. She said she heard someone crying in the wood. Said she saw footprints no one else saw. She wouldn't let it go." Elswin's voice was quiet. "So, you stopped her?" Miriam stepped back. "I told her not to go to the forest that day. I told her not to knock on that door." "What door?" "The one past the creek," she whispered. "The one buried in ivy. The one no one should open." Elswin didn't wait for more. He turned and walked toward the forest one last time. The creek behind Black Pine was half frozen, the stones slick with moss. Elswin followed an old deer path that no longer appeared on maps, but some part of him remembered it anyway. The trees grew tighter, the air heavier, and then he saw it. A stone door frame buried in ivy, crooked and sunken, like a cellar that had tried to forget it was part of a house. The door itself was wooden, rotted at the bottom, symbols carved deep into the surface, spirals, half-moons, initials. Just like the trees around Elias's cabin. He pushed it open. The scent hit him first. Earth, damp cloth, and something sweeter, like lavender turned sour. A staircase spiraled downward into blackness. He lit a match, then another, and stepped inside. The walls were lined with old furniture, broken dolls, folded letters, and shoes, children's shoes, at the bottom of the stairs. In the torchlight, something moved. He raised his light. It was Rosalind, alive barely, chained to the wall by the ankle, weak, eyes wide. "You found me," she rasped. Behind him, something breathed. Elswin spun around, hand instinctively reaching for the pistol he hadn't carried in 5 years. But what stood behind him wasn't a beast. It was Elias Blackmore. His clothes were torn, his hands filthy with earth, but his eyes, his strange pale eyes, were calm. "She came here," he said quietly. "Alone I followed her trail. I thought she might be looking for me." "You kept her down here?" "No." Elias stepped into the torchlight. "I found her down here." Elswin stared at him. "She'd already been taken," Elias continued. "The chains were old, rusted. She wasn't the first." Rosalind was shivering. "It wasn't him," she whispered. "It wasn't the wolf." Elswin turned back to her. "Then who?" A voice echoed from the stairs above. "I warned her not to knock." Miriam. She stood in the doorway, hands clasped, eyes dry. "I was trying to protect her," she said softly, "but some doors, once opened, won't shut again." Elswin stepped between Rosalind and her mother. "You chained her," he said. "You hid her." Miriam didn't flinch. "I saved her from curiosity, from obsession, from becoming like Liza." "Liza didn't run away, did she?" Miriam's lips pressed thin. "She wanted to leave, said she heard voices from the woods, that the forest called her by name. I tried to stop her. She pushed past me. I followed her to the door." Elswin's voice lowered. "And you locked her in." "I kept her fed," she said. "I prayed for her, but she changed. They all change in that place. I thought if I buried the key, the door would stay shut." Rosalind sobbed. You left me in the dark." Elias stepped forward, slow, careful. "She's not the first, but she should be the last." Elswin raised his voice. "This ends here." He led Rosalind out first, blinking at the sunlight, then Elias, then finally Miriam in cuffs. The woods watched them leave. In town, Rosalind never wore the red cloak again. She left Graybend the next spring. Elswin retired, for good this time. But once a year, on the day the trail first frosts, he walks to the edge of Black Pine just to be sure. The cellar door was sealed, but sometimes, just beneath the wind, he swears he hears a knock.